Now you may have already seen that it hasn't quite gone to plan for us just yet, because we were shortly joined by our lovely battler eagle called Angelo, who flew over to that far platform. However, he flew to that far platform and then decided to go straight off the other end and down into the field. So my colleague has now had to run round and go and get him, because he is probably one of the weakest flyers of our show team. But I'll tell you a little bit more about him when he makes his reappearance, and he'll come and join us from over there in just a second. But just before we carry on with the rest of the show, there are a couple of things that I do need to say. As you can see, we're going to have some birds that are going to be flying hopefully nice and close and low over your heads. And when the birds are out and about, we just please ask that you pay attention to where they are at all times. If anybody needs to leave at any point throughout this demonstration, you are absolutely allowed to, but just make sure you're not directly in their flight path, because if you go to stand up, you could end up with maybe our battler eagle, maybe our 300-gram kookaburra, or maybe our 3-kilo bald eagle, sticking out the side of your ear. So when you do need to leave at any point, that's fine. Again, just make sure the birds aren't directly allowed to come over at your heads. As well as any filming that anyone wants to do or any photos, we ask you to take as many photos as you possibly want, but we just ask that you don't use any selfie sticks that stick way above your heads, and that is just because these guys can't see them all that well, and if you stick it in front of one of our birds, the chances are they will collide into it just because they can't see it too well. And of course we don't want them colliding into your equipment, because it could damage them and of course your stuff. And the very last thing we'd like to say to you guys is obviously at the minute, hello Mr. Oh, the wind isn't in your favour today, is it? Now the last, you're going to come up for me? You're going to come up? Now the last thing we'd like to say as well is it is lunchtime, so you are more than welcome to eat whatever you'd like. We just ask that you take any rubbish with you, and any food that you've got, don't leave it on the ground, just because these guys are all scavengers, and sometimes, like I said, they might come down and investigate what you might have, and of course we don't want them stealing your sandwiches. What are you doing? You're struggling with the wind today. Now, this is Angelo, and we'll see if he wants to come on up. He's looking like he's struggling ever so slightly. You're struggling a little bit, mister. Are you going to come? Come on in. Good boy, well done. Now, this is Angelo, and he is struggling today, bless him, and that's just because of this wind at the minute. So, with Angelo here, he is our very beautiful battler eagle, and he is a very, very stunning bird. Now, I'm going to see if I can put him on this post just here. Now, when I say battler eagle, he's not a type of bird that is to fight, like a battling bird. That word is actually a medieval French word, which means tightrope walker or acrobat. Now, Angelo here gets that name because of the way that he flies. Now, I said to you he's not a strong flyer, and there is a very good reason for this. You can come and join me over here, Angelo. When he does his flying, you might be able to see he rocks from back to forward ever so slightly, especially when he flew over to that far side. He might have rocked a little bit, and that's where he gets his name from, the tightrope walker. Because when he's walking a bit like this, or when he's flying, he'll wiggle his wings to try and trap as much air as possible. Now, the reason why Angelo does this is because if you notice as he's flying to these posts, he has got some really, really small tail feathers. Now, when most birds fly, and when most birds need to stop, and even the gulls that are going to probably join us during the show, or the crows that will fly over our heads, you'll see they've got some lovely large wedged-shaped tail feathers. They're really, really big, and this allows the birds to drop them down when they need to stop, trap as much air as they possibly can, and they can halt to a quick stop. Angelo here doesn't have the luxury of those lovely long tail feathers. His are actually teeny tiny. You can't even see them whilst his wings are folded over like that. They're hidden straight underneath, and that's because he comes from a very specialist group of eagles. Now, Angelo, do you reckon you come join me up here, mister? Or are we going to go off into the field again, maybe? No, up onto the platform, hopefully. Maybe. Yeah, there we go. He's gone up onto the platform. David, if you can hear me, we might see if we can get him to do some flying to the platform again, because he's decided to land on up there. I want to show you guys just where he gets that name from. Now, he comes from a very specialist group of eagles. Like I said, he's those snake hunting eagles, and he has this teeny tiny tail feathers you can see, and hopefully he's going to give us that wobble. No, not quite, but a little bit. Now, he has those small tail feathers so he can keep them out of the way when he is hunting his snakes. Now, where he does come from, like I said, all the snakes he's hunting the majority of the time on the ground. Now, if he comes down to go and grab that snake, and he has a lovely long tail feathers like most other birds of prey have got, he'll be trying to thrash around to grab that snake, and he'll be smashing his tail feathers on the ground. He'll break them up, and it means then he'll struggle to fly off and go off with his snake. And then it means then he won't be able to fly again, and then he could potentially starve. So these guys have evolved to have those teeny tiny little tail feathers to keep them up and off the ground. Now with those tiny tail feathers, like I said, means that he can struggle a little bit, and then he's struggling a bit up there as well. Now with Angelo, if he does just, let's say, miss that snake and he doesn't quite grab the tail, what the snake will do is they'll usually try and wrap around and they'll try and bring his legs and his tail together. Because this means they completely immobilise Angelo, and it means basically he'll just topple over and he could potentially come the snack. He'll be the meal instead. So he's also got those tail feathers so he can keep them right up and out of the way so the snake won't make a dinner of him. Now, if he forgets to grab the head, or he misses the head of that snake, but he grabs the tail, and that snake decides to spin around and try and bite him, he's got some armour-plated scales that are on his legs as well, so it means that a snake wouldn't be able to get a good bite on him. So he is well equipped to hunting after those snakes. Now Angelo here is an extremely pretty bird as well, especially for a bird of prey. If you've ever seen any other types of birds of prey before, usually they are kind of dark colours, they're grey, sometimes they're whites, and they're not bright, vibrant patterns like what he is. Now most birds of prey, their colour is down to camouflage. They actually want to hide from the animals that they are hunting. Whereas with Angelo here, he's actually got the luxury of colour vision. Now I'm going to see if he wants to come and join me down on these platforms so you guys can get a nice, good, closer view of him, see those lovely colours. But he's got the luxury of colour vision. Now I'm sure most of you know that the more venomous a creature is, usually the more colour it's got on its body. So Angelo here having that colour vision is really important because he can tell whether a snake is venomous or whether it is perfectly fine to eat. Now even if it is venomous, he can scoff it down, it's not a problem. He just needs to make sure how delicate he is. He needs to be a little bit more controlled with his hunting. Now having that colour vision also means that a male like Angelo here can have those lovely pretty colours, and he's not quite reached his full adult colouring yet. He's still got a little way to go. He's got a bit of red that needs to come on his face and red on his legs as well. But once he gets all of that, he'll be at the age where he's ready to start building nests and start potentially having a mate. Now he can show up with those bright colours because his potential partner can see those colours. It means he can display off and warn off other males as well. So like I said, he has got the luxury of that colour vision, which is really, really important. And it is quite important for him. Now we're going to see if we can bring him over here for one last flight, because he has done well, and then we're going to send him back on down to David for one last flight down to that far platform. You might be able to see as well, he's actually got a little wire that's hanging off the back of his tail there. There might be a little blue thing that you might have been able to see. Now that is one of the most important bits of equipment that we use here on the show. Forget the gloves, forget the bag, forget everything else, or the microphone. That tail mount is the most important thing. And that is because we can track our birds if they decide to disappear off. Now none of the birds here are made to do this show. If they want to fly on off and disappear down to the estuary, they can. They can travel wherever they want to go. A bird like Angelo can make about 300 miles in a day really if he really chose to, if the weather was right. Now we've got a tracker on him, so it means we can see him no matter where he goes. And that means if he decides to disappear off, it's absolutely fine. He can do whatever he wants to do. But it just means that we can keep a real close eye on him and make sure that he is nice and safe, and try and bribe him down if he does want to come down. Sometimes they'll just decide to stay on out. And now Angelo heading on back in, we are going to be joined by a smaller bird of prey. We're moving away from eagles for a minute, and we're going to move on to a type of bird that is a hawk. Now if you've been to any other show, any other type of falconry experiences, this next bird that we're going to get out for you is going to be quite familiar. We're going to bring you out as a Harris hawk who is called Androsthe. Now Androsthe, when he comes out, hopefully he's going to give us some nice big soaring today because the wind is actually in his favour. He's actually probably one of our strongest flyers of this bird of prey show, and here he comes. Like I said, he's going to give us some nice big soaring today because this wind is perfect for him. Now be prepared for those crows that are flying around as well to give him a bit of hassle, just because he is the smallest member of our show team, and quite often those crows really don't like him. They'll try and scare him away. Now this is Androsthe, like I said, he's our lovely Harris hawk, and these guys are basically the sports car of your bird world. Whereas our bird, the eagle that we just saw, our battler eagle, Angelo, Androsthe here, he is a true hunter. He usually will like to go after his own food. He's not too bothered about picking off stuff that has already been killed. He wants his own stuff. Whereas our battler eagle that we saw, they're mainly scavengers first and foremost. So if they don't have to hunt, they won't. They are really lazy, whereas these guys are not. And that's why we see them in most shows, because they are really keen to impress us. They're really keen to be part of these shows that we do, as well as they just love being around people. Now you're going to come and join me here. Well done, mister. Now with these guys as well, they're quite unique for a bird of prey because they are called the wolves of the sky. And that's because these guys will actually hunt in packs out in the wild, which is quite unheard of for birds of prey. Most birds of prey, some birds of prey like vultures, will live together, but they won't necessarily hunt together. These guys actively hunt in groups to bring down much larger prey than what they would do alone. And it's very clever. They'll hunt in groups of about 5 or 6, and they'll try and bring down larger things like American cottontails, which are basically similar to our rabbits, just a little bit larger as well. And these guys really don't mind what it is. Basically, if most things run, they will go after it. Now, are you going to come and join me down here, mister? He's thinking not today. Now, we used to do a different type of show with Androsthe here. We used to actually do some catches with him where we would get him to catch some food up in the air. However, we have got some crows which are nesting in the trees, the big pine trees just on each side of our lawn here, and they usually give him quite a lot of hassle. They usually try and scare him off. They'll attack him, and they really don't mind about landing on his back, trying to scare him off and push him away. So we want to keep him away from the trees as much as possible and keep him down with us more and more if we can. Now I'm going to bring him out into the audience and see if he wants to do a couple more. But he might be telling me he wants to head on home, so we'll see if we can bribe him again just down here. With these guys, they know exactly which way home is, so if they don't want to be out here as part of our shows, they actually don't have to whatsoever. He can head on back home anytime he wants. And he'll usually go and land on the roof if he does want to go on home, and he'll tell basically one of our keepers that are back there, I'm done, my routine is completely finished. Are you going to come and join me down here? Good boy. He likes to cut it in nice and close. That's why I said don't get up, but just if birds are flying straight over your head, because he is a really, really agile hunter. And he is a really, really agile bird of prey for us here. Now you're going to go disappear off for me? Now with our birds here as well, we fly them a little bit differently. If you've been to most other shows, usually most people try and fling them off. They'll try and get them to go. With our birds here, all of the training is positive reinforcement. So with Androsthe here, I don't want to fling him off because that makes me being a negative area and he won't want to come and land with me. So everything's always got to be really, really nice and pleasant whilst he's flying around with us, because these guys really don't do well, especially with being flung off, because it's not a natural thing for them. They'll take off whenever they want to. Now you're going to come and join me one last time all the way down here, because you have done really well. Good boy, well done. Now, like I said, this is a new routine for him. He doesn't usually do this, and today is actually the best day he has been. Usually he's been a little bit slow and he'll hop around different posts and branches, but today he is coming in nice and close. But I think what we'll do is we're going to send him back on in. Now we'll make his way all the way over there. We're going to see Keeper Emma give him a nice big wave, and he's going to head on all the way back home. He knows his routine very, very well. Now, we've met 2 birds of prey so far. Now, the next bird that we are going to meet is going to be a predatory bird. Now, there's a difference between a predatory bird and a bird of prey. A bird of prey will usually use their feet to grab their food. They'll grab it in their feet, squeeze it, and then they'll scoff it down whenever they need their food. Whereas this next bird that we are going to meet, she actually uses her beak. And I don't need my glove whatsoever, so I'm going to take it straight off. Now, she is going to join us, hopefully, up on this far platform, just up there in just a second. And she is the largest member of the kingfisher family. Does anyone know what that might be? Anyone know what the largest member of the kingfisher family is? No? Any guesses?
Say it.
Kookaburra, there we go. You might have seen she's already come out to join us as well. Bong, you're going to come and join me down here, missus? Now there's a very good chance Bong here won't do her routine. There is a very, very good chance she's going to fly off into that direction and disappear for probably till the end of the day. And that's quite common for Bong, because this time of year she likes to go over and flirt with our male that is over in our inside garden. So don't be surprised if she vanishes off, she will come back. Now Bong here, like I said, the largest member of the kingfisher family, but it's a bit weird, these guys don't live where fish usually live. They live in dry, deserty, arid areas. Now Bong here doesn't dive down, she will dive up for her food, and hopefully we're going to show that off for you guys now. Wow, well done.
Wow.
Really good. Now the wind was at her back there, so I wasn't quite sure she was going to make it, because she's getting pushed. These guys don't like being flown with the wind at their back. They like to fly into it usually, but she's done very well so far. And like I said, these guys will usually dive up, they won't dive down. They're really agile hunters, and it doesn't matter what they're eating, as long as they can grab it and get it down in one, it really doesn't matter whatsoever. And again, that could be things like snakes, that could be things like lizards, other birds, small mammals, basically anything you can think of, as long as she can scoff it. Now, Bong, are you going to go off and see your boyfriend? I gather that would happen. She had no interest in me whatsoever. Bye-bye. She's headed all the way over there. Yeah, if you've walked around the park already today, you may have noticed that we've got a male kookaburra in our inside garden. Now, Bong likes to go over to that aviary and she will flirt all day with that male. She'll sit there and show herself off and wiggle her tail feathers, really showing herself off. So we decided, let's put Bong in there and see if they'll potentially make a nest and see if they have some baby kookaburras. We put them in there and Bong was not interested whatsoever. She only liked them when he was through the mesh, but as soon as she was in there, she would pay him no attention. She just sat in the corner staring at the wall. So now Bong's back out doing our displays. But with Bong heading on back in, or back over there, we'll move on swiftly to our next bird. For our next bird, I actually need to head all the way over to this far platform over here. Now the next bird that we're going to bring out for you guys to meet is one that lots of people don't actually like. When I usually say the word vulture, lots of people have a negative view on this bird. They usually think they're not very nice, usually dark, big, horrible birds that are usually quite ugly and probably quite smelly. I'm sure we've got movies like the Disney franchise to thank for that, because they're usually portrayed in movies as being not nice. Now when you think of a vulture, you think of bald head. Now that bald head is actually really, really important for most vultures. Although it gives them a very distinctive look, it is very, very useful for them. Because out in the wild, vultures will eat the things that nothing else wants to eat. Now, let's say there's something out in the wild that has died, let's say some cattle that has died out in the wild, a vulture will come on down and they will start eating that cattle no matter what state of decay it is in. And this is really important because they are nature's clean-up crew. They will head up down and scoff on whatever meat they possibly can, and even if it is rotten, they will stick their head straight inside that carcass and they'll start eating the rotten bits that are inside. I have just seen Bongs decide to come and join me, but instead we'll be met by Tangee, who's coming out just flying around the back of the farm there. You might hopefully head on over your heads as well. And like I said, vultures will eat those carcasses. Now they have no feathers on their heads, so they can keep themselves nice and clean when they are eating parts of those carcasses. Now whilst they are eating those carcasses, if they did have a full head of feathers, they would get all the horrible messy stuff all over those feathers. They would look pretty disgusting and they would usually get ill because they have a load of dirt on them. So they would both have no feathers on their heads whatsoever. Now Tangee here is a little bit differently. If you can get a close enough view of him as he's flying over, you'll be able to see he has got feathers on his head, and that's because he's not your typical vulture. With Tangee here, he's actually a fruit-eating species of vulture. Now, this is really important because he is one of the only species of vulture that is actually doing well. Every single other species of vulture is at the risk of going extinct, particularly within our lifetime. There's a mixture of reasons why. The very first one is because poachers actually don't like these guys whatsoever. Let's say you're a poacher that's sat out in Africa and you've decided that you're going to take yourself an elephant for its ivory. Now, the vultures will sit above and they will wait for those poachers to make their kill. Once they've taken their ivory, driven off, the vultures will be hanging around until it's time for their meal. Now, what's happening is the rangers are seeing these vultures gathering in mass groups, waiting for that kill, and it's giving away the poacher's position. So poachers are actually going out and intentionally shooting these guys, they're poisoning them, and they're just trying to eradicate them completely. Now, luckily there's loads of teams out there which are helping these guys, and there's loads of places like Save the Vultures which are helping these guys, giving them safe areas to feed and safe areas to nest, as well as helping to rear vultures in the wild that may have potentially lost their parents, so we can keep their numbers up. Now there's another reason why these guys are doing poor, and it's down to a chemical that was being used as a medicine out in Qatar in places like India and Asia. Now, that chemical is called diclofenac, and some of you may have actually used that this morning. It's found in things like Voltarol gel, and it's used as an anti-inflammatory. Now, it did its job really, really well, but unfortunately, if the cattle succumbed to its illness that it was being used on, usually what's happening is that cattle is being left to go back to nature and left in the field to rot down. That means the vultures are coming down and they're doing their work, which they're designed to do, which is their clean up, and eating as much as they can. But unfortunately, that diclofenac is so poisonous that within 24 to 48 hours, it's actually killing a vulture outright. So these guys were doing really, really, really poor. Now, luckily, there was a scientist that was down here in Cornwall that managed to make the link between diclofenac and the vultures, and now their numbers are rising slightly, but they still suffer and still have a lot of ground to make up. Now, like I said, with Tangee here, he's a fruit-eating species. He is our palm nut vulture, and he is coming in nice and low because those gulls are trying to scare him off. Now, he mainly lives in palm nut plantations, which are found out in Africa. And I'm sure you know as well, lots of the foods that we eat has got a lot of palm nuts in it. And it is actually helping these guys a bit. They're living in those plantations because about 90% of Tangee's diet here will be those palm nuts. Now, he will eat meat from time to time if he can get hold of it, and a bit of fish, but he mainly likes those palm nuts. Now, I'll bring him down to me for one last flight. He has done very, very well. Now, lots of people do ask us as well, especially at the end of the show, is that vulture actually a vulture? Because he looks suspiciously like a seagull. He is a vulture. He's got just those colour markings that are exactly the same, so he can hide himself away when he's out in his natural habitat. And Tangee here is still young as well. He still needs to get some red on his face. You might be able to see he's starting to blush, starting to colour up ever so slightly. And hopefully when he has reached his full maturity, he will have a lovely bright red face. Now, with Tangee heading on back in, we are going to move on to the last bird of our show. And we're probably going to move on to the best bird of our show. Now, we're going to move on to a bald eagle who is called Dakota. Now, hopefully when Dakota comes on out, he's going to give us some nice big flights as well, because the wind's in a perfect direction for him, and he likes it slightly windy. Well, all the birds like it that we're flying here, slightly windy, and that's because they are broad-winged birds of prey. Now, these guys are designed to have those lovely big rounded wings that have almost got fingertip-like feathers that are right on the end, and it means that they can catch the thermals and fly around and glide on the heat that's rising, but as well as the wind. These guys are lazy flyers. They're all designed just to sit up really high and not have to do a lot of effort whatsoever. When Androsthe came out and you saw him soaring above our heads and circling, when he was flying around, he wasn't really putting in much effort, only when he was taking off. All of these guys are doing. That's what makes them quite lazy. Now, these guys, unlike your true types of birds of prey, which are things like penguins and your falcons, they are your main hunters, and those guys have to work no matter what the conditions are. If it's windy, if it's not windy, anything else, they've really got to put in a lot of effort. Now, what our big eagles and what our birds will do here, of our broad-winged birds of prey, now usually they will use their lazy style of hunting and flying to intimidate other animals off of their food. And they do this particularly with things like crows and things like peregrines and your other types of falcons. They'll use their size to muscle off other animals off their food, so they don't actually have to do any hunting whatsoever. And that's why these guys are quite happy doing our display here. There's nothing stopping our Dakota here heading down to the estuary, and he can head straight down there if he wants to, but he doesn't want to whatsoever. Basically, he doesn't want to hunt for himself, he doesn't want to look after it for his own food. He's more than happy to fly here with us instead. Now, with our bald eagle here, lots of people think when I say bald eagle that they have got no feathers on their heads whatsoever, just like the vultures. However, you can see he's got those lovely white head feathers on him. Now, he gets the word bald eagle from an old English word, which is meaning piebald, and some of you may have heard it if you work with horses or even snakes. It basically means to be marked with white. And that's where these guys come in, with that marked with white. Now, they've got that coloration because it is a camouflage. These guys out in the wild will hunt fish mainly. They are specialist fish hunters. Now, if he was the size he was, but he had a dark head, a fish would be able to see him straight away, and they would know this is a bald eagle, and they would try and swim down as far away as they can. Whereas with Dakota here, with that white head and that white tail, it means he can blend in. When the fish is looking up, all they see is his white head, or white feathers, and those wings, and he just looks like a bit of debris that's floating along. So he can come on down and grab that food nice and easy. Wow. Now, unfortunately for the bald eagles, eating those down, almost completely disappeared. Now, there's a number of reasons why these guys almost disappeared, but the main one is a chemical called DDT. DDT was being used out in the wilds of North America, and it was being sprayed as a pesticide on their fields, and it worked really, really well. Unfortunately, it worked too well, and when it was washing off with the rain, it was going straight down into the river systems, causing these guys to come on down and eat loads and loads of fish that had been poisoned by that DDT. Now, eating all those fish, and they thought it was a lovely buffet, but unfortunately it stopped these guys from being able to metabolize calcium. So simple flying, like what we're doing here, these guys couldn't do. Their eggs, which are made mostly out of calcium, were actually breaking, and they weren't making it whatsoever. So the adults weren't making it, the youngsters weren't making it, and these guys were looking pretty sorry for themselves. Luckily, they found the link and stopped the use of that DDT, and they have made a massive bounce back. They're now in the hundreds of thousands, and they're doing really, really well all over North America, right the way from Alaska and Canada all to northern Mexico. And we're hoping this is going to be a similar story for the vultures. As I was saying, they had problems with chemicals out in the wild that was poisoning them, and they weren't making it, but luckily they've managed to turn these guys around, so hopefully they'll be able to turn the vultures around as well. Now we're going to make this his last flight over to me, because he has done very, very well. Now he's going to head on back down to David down on the post down at the front there, and what we're going to do now is we're going to give you guys a chance to come on up and get a much closer view of some of our birds of prey. You guys can come up and have photos, you guys can take some photos of these guys, take some selfies, ask us as many questions as you possibly want, or anything that I haven't answered during this talk. But from myself, from David, from Emma, staff here at Paradise, we do hope that you have enjoyed your day so far, and we hope to see you again very, very soon. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Cheers, buddy.